Did the Denver Broncos need to lock down a star player ahead of training camp 2025? And if so, which contract extension should be the highest priority for Sean and George Payton? Also, is a major announcement finally coming for the Denver Nuggets? All things to come on today's rundown, but we will begin in the world of the NFL, where the Denver Broncos may have some paydays coming in the semi-near future. Mandatory minicamp wrapped up last week. We are now on summer break for the NFL and for the Denver Broncos until training camp comes late next month. And then things will really get rolling. And last offseason, we witnessed a holdout from organized team activities and mandatory minicamp from wide receiver Courtland Sutton due to contract disagreements and negotiations. Sutton, after catching 10 touchdowns in a season with Russell Wilson, wanted more money and was willing to hold out for his services in order to get that. He was a non-participant. It was a major storyline heading into the offseason of last year, and Sutton was visibly frustrated with the situation. Sutton, obviously, at that time in his late 20s, nearing toward the age of 30, as he is now, and understood the timing of the situation and tried to maximize the value that he had built over the course of a 6 or 7 year career where he was producing pretty steadily with a absolute revolving door at the quarterback position for the Broncos. Well, I don't know that he got exactly what he wanted, but he did get something, and that was a little bit of a cash infusion up front and an additional list of incentives, the majority, if not all of which, he hit last season in his rookie season with Bo Nix, where he finished with just over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. Are we going to see that again? So far, we have not. Sutton was present during OTAs and mandatory minicamp and seemed to be in relatively good spirits, according to these eyes and the eyes of others on site there. And that begs the question, what is going on with Courtland Sutton? Because by and large, that was kind of the message that we got last offseason was that, hey, we're going to give you this money up front. We're going to give you some incentives. Go hit those, and then we'll talk about an extension in the offseason. That was kind of the message that we interpreted from Sean and George Payton and the Denver Broncos to Courtland Sutton. Well, he did that. So now the rubber kind of has to meet the road on the back half of that promise, and thus far it has not. Sutton has intentionally, according to Mike Kliss, not spoken to the media amid these negotiations and these discussions. And it puts the Broncos in a little bit of a potential pickle, because take a look at the amount of expiring contracts after the 2025 season that the Denver Broncos have among key starters. Wide receiver Courtland Sutton, obviously aforementioned. Outside linebacker Nick Bonito, coming off of a breakout season for him at the pass rusher spot. The trio of stout defensive linemen, starting with the big man Zach Allen, new incoming player John Franklin Myers, and Malcolm Roach. And then you have linebacker Alex Singleton, the kicker Will Lutz, always a sneaky position to maybe have to change out at the NFL level. Jaquan McMillan, the slot cornerback, and fullback Michael Burton. Now, obviously, some of those trail off in importance as you get toward the end compared to the front half of that list. And that's where I kind of want to park things for the negotiations upcoming with the Denver Broncos. You're going to want to do something, by and large, with Courtland Sutton if you're the Denver Broncos. Yes, he's a wide receiver who is on the wrong side or entering the wrong side of the age of 30, which at the wide receiver position is pretty ancient for most players in the NFL. But he's also the biggest connection that you have with Bo Nix, a player who's ascending, and you hope to continue that progression and that growth heading into his sophomore season. Because outside of Courtland Sutton, who you can say maybe isn't a number one wide receiver, true number one for a third or a certain number of teams in the league, he's your number one. And after that, you've got a bunch of maybes and I don't knows. Maybe Marvin Mims takes another step and continues to be a productive wide receiver. But is he a wide receiver one archetype? Probably not. Devon Bailey's a 7th-round pick, and while he had one of the more productive seasons for a 7th-round rookie wide receiver in recent history, that's not exactly something you want to bet the farm on either. Troy Franklin is the ultimate boom or bust candidate. You signed Evan Ingram to be your joker, but he plays a tight end. You drafted Pat Bryant, and yes, he may represent the future, but what does he look like in the present? So you almost, if you're the Broncos, even if it leaves a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth, you're going to want to explore some kind of short-term extension for Courtland Sutton and probably pay him more than you might feel comfortable with as you get north of that $22, $23 million per year range, which would put Courtland Sutton on the back end of the top 15 or so paid receivers in the NFL in terms of average annual value. But you can't necessarily go overboard on it because you've got some big contracts that need to be doled out as soon as potentially this offseason. Nick Bonito, as I mentioned, having a breakout pass rushing season last season. The stout front of your defensive line, which was so key in developing pressure and allowing your edge rushers to line up and tee off, and Zach Allen being at the center of that, a genuine Pro Bowl snub, in my opinion. John Franklin-Myers and Malcolm Roach, two bargain deals that you got last season if you're the Denver Broncos that you're going to have to readdress in this upcoming offseason. And the all likelihood, you can't keep everybody. So where does the hierarchy begin for the Denver Broncos in terms of their expiring contracts? I am not a huge fan of paying wide receivers that are 30 or above big time money for what you can only assume is going to be declining production. Now, has Courtland Sutton defied a lot of that potential trend over the last handful of years? Yes, and he has proven that he can be productive with just about any quarterback to at least a respectable level. But I am not going to overpay Courtland Sutton and potentially jeopardize the ability to bring back a guy like Nick Bonito on a contract extension that he is going to deserve at the edge rusher position and is going to cost you, because of the market value, a pretty penny. And it may not happen in the offseason, but I still think you've got to look at trying to find a way to potentially bring back Zach Allen, whether it's in mid-season, in the beginning of the season, or if you're willing to run that gambit and run another prove-it year back and have Zach Allen go through the entirety of the season to get something done before he becomes a true unrestricted free agent, then you can go that route. But this Broncos defense is the core and the heartbeat of what has carried them through the first year of a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. Now, Bo was picking up more of his weight at the end than he was at the beginning of the season, but make no mistake, a step backward for this Broncos defense would be detrimental to the sophomore season development of Bo Nix and to their capability to maintain a status as a contender for the AFC West, a contender in the AFC as a playoff team, and beyond. How far down that contending ladder they're able to go, that is something you have to wait and see. But I think the Broncos are in a little bit of a sticky situation with Courtland Sutton, where conventionally you want to pay a guy who's developed the best chemistry with your young quarterback and keep stability in a position room where you really don't have a clear-cut number two, let alone a bona fide number one at this current moment in terms of all around the league. But you can't let it jeopardize the players you're going to have to pay on defense, a young, homegrown, potential home run hit in Nick Bonito, that in terms of a draft and developed player, and a key free agent like Zach Allen, who under Vance Joseph's system has produced one of the better seasons at the interior defensive line that we've seen for the Broncos in the last decade or so. Can you keep everybody? No. But if you want to keep three of the five, a Courtland Sutton, a Nick Bonito, and a Zach Allen, or the two defensive players, and maybe a John Franklin-Myers or so, which means you let Courtland Sutton walk, you can go down that path. My point is the hierarchy here for the Broncos in terms of the priority with which they need to assign these contract extensions is a little bit sticky, and I think the dominoes are going to start to fall here in the next number of weeks before training camp starts. Because once it rolls into training camp, preseason's on the doorstep, the regular season is upon us, and the focus starts to shift toward the tasks at hand. So we will see how George and Sean Payton approach these in the coming days. But I do think for at least two, probably three of some of those 5 or 6 aforementioned players, Paydays are coming from the orange and blue, and we will see how it all shakes out. In the world of the NBA, we are still looking and still wondering who is going to hold the name tag title of general manager for your Denver Nuggets. We did get an announcement that they will not be renewing the contract of an assistant general manager, someone whose name was brought in back in April, very, very early in the process when Calvin Booth was fired, and that is Tommy Balcetis. He's been with the team for more than a decade, coming in 2013 to help run the analytics department, and has now worked his way all the way up to assistant GM alongside current interim general manager Ben Tenzer. I think it's become clear from the Nuggets' perspective which person they favor in that pairing and the fork in the road that could potentially appear there, as Tenzer, who is also assistant general manager, was named interim GM. Balcetis has now had his contract. It will be announced that he is not going to be renewed at the conclusion of it. So I still think Ben Tenzer is probably the reasonable leader in the clubhouse. The Nuggets couldn't wait to rip the interim tag off of David Adelman to become the new head coach and kind of take the mantle from Coach Malone, the former head coach and the winningest head coach in franchise history. But there's been an unusual amount of hesitancy, in my opinion, about the replacement for the GM position, even if it is just peeling off the interim label away from Ben Tenzer. When they didn't do it right away, the way they did with David Adelman, my first thought was actually a positive one, to say, hey, okay, they're going to amass this collection of young minds, and they're going to really go through their due diligence, due process. Maybe they go for a home run hitter like a Bob Myers, who was the architect behind several Warriors championship teams in Golden State. And then all was very quiet, and I think too quiet on the Western Front when it comes to that search, because Shams Charania or any NBA insiders that we follow regularly for updates and informations on these things was mum's the word. There was no leakage, apparently, which you would think would behoove the agents and some of these guys to get that name out there to increase their profile as candidates, to show, hey, they're getting interviews. None of that came from the Nuggets or anyone around the NBA who was sniffing in on what the Nuggets are doing. So they don't take the interim tag off of Ben Tenzer. They don't have any reported interviews coming from more established candidates around the league. And for an organization that's already so insular, the way the Nuggets and the Avs are, it's a little bit head-scratching, because now it feels like it's gone too long. And so unless they just waited an insane amount of time to rip the interim tag off of Ben Tenzer and make him the official general manager of your Denver Nuggets, or they found a way to interview Bob Myers and a number of more experienced candidates at other organizations without ever having it reported in any kind of major capacity, nationally or locally, then I'm not exactly sure what they're doing. Are they waiting to hear or speak to a member of the front office in Indiana or in Oklahoma City, who are currently 5 games into the NBA Finals series, and now the Pacers find themselves on the brink of elimination? Perhaps. But again, I think these are things that would have been reported and leaked if that was the case. So the silence on this matter from the Denver Nuggets is a little bit deafening, and it has me itchy. It has me a little antsy, and it has me a little bit confused as to what is going on. We're watching massive trades between the Orlando Magic and the Memphis Grizzlies, which sends KCP, the former Nuggets championship hero, back to the Western Conference, to a conference rival. And swapping of 4 first-round picks and pick swaps, and Desmond Bane goes here, and KCP goes there. We're watching the services of Kevin Durant be swirled and bidded for among Western Conference opponents like the Houston Rockets and the San Antonio Spurs. And the Nuggets don't have anyone in an official capacity, not an interim capacity, not a helping hand capacity, who could potentially be helping make any of these decisions. Would the Nuggets be in on Kevin Durant? No, they don't have the kind of cachet to do that without breaking up a core that they've been extremely reluctant and hesitant and defiant to do. So would they have been in on a Desmond Bain? Do they even have the draft capital to be able to make some of these moves and all that? Absolutely not. My point is, there's no one sitting in the chair that we know of in an official capacity. Obviously, Ben Tenzer in an interim capacity is doing work. You would hope that Josh Kroenke is taking a more elevated role in some of these decisions. But we've gotten more announcements about people that they're continuing to let go and land that they're trying to acquire and have acquired than we have about who's going to be hired to replace a guy that was fired in April. It's bizarre. It is bizarre to me, and they may play it off as no big deal. Others may play it off as no big deal, but something is up and something is off here, and I just don't know what it is. So my guess is maybe with the departure of Tommy Balcetis after the conclusion of his contract and the way that we are nearing now the end of the NBA Finals between the Thunder and the Pacers, I can only imagine that as we go on nearly a month now, or we are heading toward a month without hearing any news on this front, that an announcement and a decision is coming soon. At this point, anything, even if it's ripping off the interim tag from Ben Tenzer, will feel out of the blue. And I just wonder, again, the same way that I brought up the questions about Coach Prime and the Buffs yesterday, which I was met with some resistance from certain members of our staff here about when it comes to setting the expectation for CU, given everything that's come to pass during the Coach Prime era. I ask again, are the Nuggets being too dismissive and flippant and careless, for lack of a better word, with these years in the now that are some of the best of Nikola Jokic's career as he maintains his status by and large as the best player in the National Basketball Association and someone who is right now arguably a top 15 or 20 player in the history of the NBA? And the answer to that makes me want to say yes. And what a move could come, a transaction could correspond and make me feel less that way. But as I sit here right now on June 17th, 2025, it kind of feels that way. And I don't like it. And I think it makes me a little bit uneasy. So my hope is that I'm coming to you tomorrow, Friday, Monday of next week, and we can discuss and get into the decision that they've made on that front office hire that has been vacant since basically mid to late April, early April. And I just don't understand why. So hopefully clarity will be coming on that in the coming days, the same way clarity will be coming for several members of the Denver Broncos about what their immediate future holds in the orange and blue and how deeply their name is printed on the future plans for Sean Payton in this organization. We will get into it all on Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan at DenverSports.com, where Andrew Mason and Cecil Lammy and Jake Shapiro and Will Peterson and Trent Finnegan and so many other contributors have an unbelievable up-to-the-minute wealth of information for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can catch it on the air on Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan or across all of our social channels like you are watching this show likely right now. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter/X, wherever you consume media, we have it there for you, and we will catch you again at the same time tomorrow. I do what I love what I do, second nature.